800 kilometers inside Russia. The Tonight, it is burning. This plant feeds the explosives packed into Russian artillery shells. It sits farther from the war than Moscow itself. It was supposed to be untouchable. Then, out of the northern dark, came a sound that should not be there. Low, steady, mechanical, the drone of a small engine descending straight down out of the night. A single fireball climbs off the roof of an ammonia workshop and turns the snow orange. Past midnight, April 13, 2026, something had flown the entire 800 kilometers and found it. This is how Ukraine reached 800 kilometers into the Russian heartland and set fire to a factory the Kremlin could not afford to lose. To understand this strike, you have to understand the target. The plant is called Cherepovets Azot in Vologda Oblast, part of the Appetit and Fosagro industrial empire. On paper, it makes fertilizer, ammonia, ammonium nitrate, the stuff that feeds crops. But ammonium nitrate has a second life. It is a raw ingredient on the road to TNT and hexogen, the high explosives packed into artillery shells. And Cherepovets Azot is one of the biggest ammonia producers in all of Russia, with 3 workshops capable of around 900,000 tons a year. Knock those out, and you do not just hurt a fertilizer company. You reach up the supply chain into the explosives that Russian guns burn through by the thousand every single day. The problem for Ukraine was distance. The plant sits roughly 800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, 500 kilometers north of Moscow, ringed by layered air defenses guarding the capital. For 3 years, that distance was the plant's best armor. On the other side of this story is the weapon built to erase it. Ukraine says the strike was flown by its Unmanned Systems Forces under their commander, Robert Magyar Brovdi. The weapon at the center of it is a long-range, one-way attack drone. Ukrainian sources point to the Firepoint FP-1, a deep strike machine with a range said to reach around 1,600 kilometers and a warhead between 60 and 120 kilograms. It is propeller-driven, it is slow, and it is built to never come home. But a single slow drone cannot just stroll through the air defenses that protect the approaches to Moscow. So the planners did something cleverer. Alongside the real strike drones, they flew decoys, cheap, near-empty airframes whose only job is to look like a threat. Light up the radar, soak up the missiles, make the defenders guess which contact is carrying a warhead and which is carrying nothing at all. Picture the route now, drawn across the map. Launch from deep inside Ukraine, then north and east, 800 kilometers over Russian territory, around cities between air defense zones, threading the dark farmland and forest toward Vologda Oblast, hour after hour, low and patient. By the time the first contacts reach the region, the defenders have a swarm on their screens and seconds to decide. Vologda's governor would later claim air defenses shot down 13 drones over the region, even if that is true, and Ukraine has not confirmed those numbers. It tells you how many were in the sky, and it only takes the ones that get through. At the plant, it is a working night. Cherepovets Azot runs around the clock, and its operators knew they were a target. The site had been fitted with anti-drone metal structures, crude cages, and screens meant to catch or deflect an incoming drone before it reaches the critical machinery. In this reconstruction, the first warning is sound, that low mechanical buzz growing over the floodlit towers and pipework of the ammonia workshops. Then the defenses open up somewhere in the dark, tracer climbing into the night. But the swarm is doing its work. The decoys pull attention one way, the strike drones bore in another. The first one comes down on a workshop roof, and the warhead detonates against an ammonia unit. Fuel lines, gas, pressurized plumbing, all the things you never want fire near. A bright flash, then the slower, uglier glow of an industrial fire taking hold. A second drone reaches a second workshop. 2 of the plant's 3 ammonia units are now burning. Sirens, floodlights cutting through smoke, workers pulling back from the heat. Ukraine says the strike ignited fires at 2 of 3 ammonia workshops. And the fires, at least, are confirmed by multiple sources. What is not confirmed is how deep the damage went. Whether the structures were destroyed or merely scorched. Whether any ammonia storage tank was hit. Whether anyone was hurt. Those answers stayed inside the smoke. By daylight, the fight moves from the plant to the open source feed. Videos and photographs spread online. fire and black smoke rolling off the Cherepovets Azot site, geolocated by analysts who match every tower and tank to satellite imagery. Ukraine claims the strike. Russian regional officials acknowledge an attack and insist their air defenses downed 13 drones. But notice what is being argued about, and what is not. Both sides agree drones reached Vologda Oblast. Both sides agree there was fire at the plant. The disagreement is only about how much got through and how badly it hurt. That is the tell, because the strategic point does not depend on the final damage tally. It depends on the distance. A propeller drone, slow enough to hear, flew 800 kilometers past the air defenses guarding Moscow itself and put fire on an ammonia plant feeding Russia's explosive supply. The exact destruction is unconfirmed, the reach is not, and the reach is the weapon. If a Firepoint drone can find Cherepovets Azot, then every chemical plant, every refinery, every rail yard and ammunition line deep inside European Russia is now a coordinate on someone's map. Production shutdowns, output losses. Ukraine has hinted at them, but they remain unconfirmed. What is certain is simpler and colder. The factories Moscow believed were safely in the rear are not in the rear anymore. For 3 years, Russia's war economy ran on a comfortable assumption that the front was one place and the factories were another, and that 800 kilometers of sky stood between them. Cherepovets Azot is what happens when that assumption dies. Not with a stealth bomber, not with a cruise missile, with a cheap propeller drone and a cloud of decoys, flown patiently through the dark by a force that did not exist a few years ago. The fertilizer plant still stands. The fires were put out. But the math has changed, and everyone watching knows it. On every side of the line, when the deep industrial heart of a nuclear power can be hunted by a machine you can build in a workshop, no rear area is ever fully safe again. The next coordinate could be a refinery, a shell line, or a port. Which one Ukraine reaches for next, and how far the drones can really fly, is the question we will follow in another Defense Declassified.